house stood on a hill, a skeletal silhouette against the bruised twilight sky. Alex bought it for a song. He wanted isolation, a place where the noise of the city couldn't reach him, where he could finally hear himself think. The real estate agent had called it a fixer-upper with character. Alex just called it the escape. The floors creaked like old booms, and a draft whispered through the halls, but it was quiet, the kind of profound, heavy silence he'd been craving. For the first few hours, it was perfect. He unpacked his few boxes, ordered a pizza to the end of the long, winding driveway, and ate it sitting on the floor of the empty living room, watching the sun bleed out behind the distant hills. That night, the silence broke. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible. A faint, rhythmic tap, 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 somewhere in the house. He sat up in his sleeping bag, listening. Probably just the old pipe settling, he told himself, or a branch against a window. He lay back down, pulling the bag tighter around his shoulders. The tapping continued, a slow, steady heartbeat in the cavernous dark. Tap-a-tap-a-tap. He eventually drifted off, the sound a strange, unwelcome lullaby. The second night, it was louder. No longer a gentle suggestion, but a definite, intentional sound. Tap, tap, tap. It had a rhythm, a cadence that felt almost deliberate. He got up, flashlight in hand, and began his search. He checked the windows, no branches. He checked the plumbing in the bathroom, no drips. The sound seemed to be everywhere and nowhere. At once, when he stood in the main hallway, it felt like it was coming from the floorboards. When he went downstairs, it seemed to be in the ceiling. It was playing with him, a maddening game of hide-and-seek. Sleep was a luxury he couldn't afford that night. By the third night, the rhythm had changed. It was faster. Tap dash tap dash tap dash tap dash tap. A frantic, impatient drumming that vibrated through the very frame of the house. Alex's nerves were frayed. He'd barely eaten. His eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep. The silence he paid for had been stolen, replaced by this incessant percussion. It wasn't just in the house anymore. It was in his head, a constant echo even when the actual sound paused for a breath. It was coming from inside the walls. He was sure of it now. He depressed his ear against the floral patterned wallpaper in the dining room, and the sound would be right there, a frantic little prisoner trying to get out. The following days were a blur of caffeine and paranoia. The tapping never stopped. It would slow down, speed up, move from room to room. One moment it was in the kitchen, the next it was upstairs in the guest bedroom. It was a torment, a personalized symphony of insanity. Alex started talking to it. "What do you want?" He'd yell into the empty halls, his voice hoarse. "Leave me alone." The only reply was the steady, mocking tap, 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 tap. His friends called, their voices a distant echo from a world he no longer belonged to. "How's the new place, man?" they'd ask. "It's quiet," he'd lie, the light tasting like ash in his mouth while the drumming hammered against his skull. He knew he sounded unhinged. He knew he was losing his grip. This house wasn't an escape, it was a trap. One afternoon, driven by a desperate hunch, he went down to the basement. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and decay. The single bare bulb cast long, dancing shadows. The tapping was loudest to hear. It was deafening, a chaotic, furious assault on his senses. It was coming from the far wall, a section of stone and mortar that looked different from the rest. Newer, almost like a wound that had been crudely stitched up. He ran his hands over the surface. It was cold, and the vibrations from the tapping were so strong he could feel them buzzing up his arms. This was it, the heart of the nightmare. Fueled by a surge of adrenaline and rage, he grabbed a sledgehammer left behind by the previous owners. He swung. The first impact sent a spiderweb of cracks across the mortar. Dust and grit filled the air. He swung again, and again, and again. Chunks of brick and plaster rained down onto the dirt floor. He worked like a man possessed, his breath coming in ragged gasps, sweat stinging his eyes. The tapping on the other side became more frantic, more excited, as if cheering him on. With a final, guttural roar, he brought the hammer down, and the wall crumbled, revealing a dark, cavernous space behind it. The sound stopped. For the first time in over a week, there was silence. A true, deafening silence that was almost more terrifying than the noise. Alex dropped the sledgehammer, his body trembling with exhaustion. He pointed his flashlight into the newly opened cavity. It was a small, dim-lit space, no bigger than a closet. And in the center, sitting in a decrepit wooden chair, was a skeleton. It was draped in the tattered remains of old clothing, its bones yellowed with age and coated in a thick layer of dust. One of its skeletal hands was raised, the bony tip of its index finger hovering just millimeters above a small, child-sized drum that sat on a little stool in front of it. On the drum's warm leather surface was a single, fresh, glistening drop of blood. Alex's blood ran cold. He couldn't breathe. His gaze darted around the tiny, hidden room. He saw the other hand of the skeleton. Its bony fingers were worn down, resting against the inside of the stone wall he had just broken through. Scratches, deep and frantic, covered the stone. That wasn't the sound he'd been hearing. The tapping had been from the drum. The scratching was something else entirely. The source of the noise he'd heard wasn't the skeleton trying to get out. It was something trying to get in. He slowly backed away, his heart hammering against his ribs. The silence in the house felt heavy. Watchful, he turned and fled, scrambling up the basement stairs, not daring to look back. He burst out of the front door and ran, not stopping until the old house was just a dark shape on the horizon. He thought he was free. He thought he had escaped the curse. But as he sat in his car, miles away, his hands shaking on the steering wheel, he felt it. A faint, uncontrollable twitch in his index finger. He looked down. His finger was moving, rising and falling in a familiar rhythm. Tap. He tried to stop it, but he could in single quotes tap. He gripped his hand, trying to still the motion, but the impulse was overwhelming, a current running through his veins. Tap. The house wasn't haunted by a ghost. The house itself was a living entity, and it was hungry. It didn't want him to leave. It just needed a new drummer. The final scene isn't in that basement. It's right here, in this car, with me. The scratching has stopped, but the tapping has just begun. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more chills. See you in the next one.